Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to The Middle with Chris Adams. I am here with a wonderful guest, somebody that I respect immensely, from We the Internet TV and Unsafespace podcast, Toby Muresianu, everybody.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Yes.
I'll give myself a little round of applause.
Maybe I'll add that in later. Who knows?
Okay, I hope I didn't fuck up the audio just there.
No, it's fine. So what I really respect about you, you take politics and you actually argue it with facts.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, which I never see. Mm-hmm. Most people argue it with emotion. I talked about this with Ty Rivera on the last episode that I did. Yeah. And a lot of people just will just say things and I go, I believe this, but you go, well, here's some charts.
Yeah. I've got to love the charts. Yeah. I mean, I think that ideally you should both be on the same side pursuing truth and knowledge. And, there's a place for feelings and empathy, but at the same time, you can't let that get in the way of the real picture of the situation. And,
No, exactly. And what I don't think a lot of people understand, and that's why I like your podcast, because what you do is you attack both sides. You say, okay, let's listen to each other. Mm-hmm. Let's find out where the common ground is. Yeah. And not too many people even have that approach, which is you're a refreshing, I would say you're the new face of the new front of politics.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You were on the modern edge. There's a new line. It's people like me, I think, as well. I'm my podcast is in the middle, so I try to understand things as well. That's great. And what I don't think people do enough is talk. Yeah. They just devolve into yelling. Mm-hmm.
They devolve into yelling, or they withdraw from the conversation because they're afraid of getting yelled at.
Which I have done at times. And not to say that I'm perfect. I have my moments on Facebook.
Absolutely, me too.
Okay, that's good. I thought it was just me. All right. And I try to attack things with logic. And I have, my opinions have changed. Mm-hmm. Part from listening to your podcast, part from listening to Ty Rivera, part from listening to other people. Mm-hmm. I've discovered differences of opinion, and I discovered that is okay. Mm-hmm. It's not like we don't have to just our side, our team is right. Politics is a lot like sports. Mm-hmm. People are like, my team is right and screw everyone else. Yeah. It's like, no, well, let's really sit down, and because these are real issues we're trying to tackle. Yeah. And we might have differences of opinion on that issue, like poverty or the wage gap, or one of the most recent ones I listened to was the freedom of speech one. Mm-hmm. And I actually had a question about that.
Sure.
At the end, this girl seemed to get very offended by one of the speakers. I believe it was the guy that directed the
film. Silence You Part 2, which was it's a documentary on campus free speech and specifically on a controversy at Yale a few years ago, and the aftermath about that and what it showed about Yale's values and direction and stuff like that. You can go to silenceyou.com and it'll take you right to the YouTube page. Sorry, just a quick aside.
No, absolute plug away. Yeah. Everyone should see it. I've seen it more than once.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen both of them.
That's all my other hats. So I run Unsafespace, which is the podcast, and I also work for We the Internet TV, which produced that documentary, which are both, We the Internet TV is now sponsoring our podcast, but
perfect.
We've been doing it for a few years.
Real quick before we get too deep, there's a new live event of your podcast happening at the Improv.
Oh yeah, on Monday, April 17th at 8 p.m. at the Hollywood Improv Lab. You can see our next show, which is, maybe I should just describe it. People do stand up on controversial topics, and then there's a discussion with experts and the audience. So it's a lot of fun. And our topic for this week or this month is Russia. So we have two comedians of Russian or Ukrainian origin. Oh, nice. And then Kira Sultanovich and Sophia Alexandra, both very funny.
I love Kira.
Yeah, she's great.
I met her doing Flappers a long time ago. Yeah. And she is, not only is she great, but not only is she funny, everybody, but she is such a sweet human being. Mm-hmm. You met her. I've met her, yeah. She's so nice and so just, it's hard. For those of you that listen to this and aren't in entertainment, not everyone is very genuine. In fact, most people are kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
But she is a great person, and so definitely check that show out. Just at least for her, but also for the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great show.
Yeah.
I can't think enough. I when I found it, I've been like just eating them up.
Really? Oh, that's so nice to hear, because, sometimes you produce it and you see the downloads, so I know people are downloading it.
Yeah.
But so much of it's like a one-way street at times that, you're like, I hope this is getting out there. But then sometimes I'll meet someone who I went to high school with, who I haven't talked to in years, like, I love your podcast. And I was like, wow, I had no idea, you know?
Well, I mean, that's why I started doing this, and that's why comedians, I think, well, this is for comedians. So if you really want to get out there, you got to do something different and unique and something you care about. That's why you're doing what you're doing. And, that's why I'm doing this. And that's why I think people need to just, if you love it, it doesn't matter about the success or all the other things, because that will come over time. And as you've seen, people are already giving you feedback in person. Like, oh, I love this thing.
Yeah.
And that's really what we do it for, I think. Even
That's
more
really
than
rewarding.
Yeah, not the money's good, but I
Could
can
be better.
Yeah, it could be better. I could live on compliments for a while. It won't. Doesn't feed me, but it feeds my soul.
Yeah.
So,
but I always, not always thought, but one thing that I have thought to myself when I've been tempted to do stuff that I wasn't really into, was just like, if I wanted to do something just like purely for money or success or something like that,
yeah,
I could just get a real job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, I guess the one specific example that comes to mind is like, I got a manager a few years ago and he's like, you got to take acting classes. So I took all these acting classes. And after some point I was just like, I don't like acting. Like, what's the goal here? That I can audition for some sitcom that's probably not great, but I'll be thrilled to be
a part of
part of a sitcom, and then I get on a sitcom, and in my mind I'm still going to be wondering about what if I did those projects I was really passionate about. And so I thought, you know what? I mean, there's enough actors, there's enough everyone in this business. Just do the thing you're really passionate about, and if it doesn't work out, at least you'll have left it on the field, and you can have no regrets, or less regrets.
Well,
let's not get crazy.
Let's not get crazy. Everybody has regrets, but exactly, and that's what I've decided to do as well. It's like I don't want to just go, what? Oh, I didn't really try, and you have to put everything out into it, and you can't hold back, and that's why I really like what you're doing, because I know you're a smart guy. I've talked to you.
Oh, thank you.
No, I know this is sounding like I'm just. But he's a really intelligent person, and when you meet somebody like that, it helps. I love the fact that you're taking that and putting it into this podcast, and using that as a vehicle for yourself, because that's inspiring. It's pretty inspiring, because that's what I think more people, if they were honest with themselves, would do. Like, what is it you're truly passionate about, and how do we get that out to the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a sense, when I started doing this podcast, that I was like, for a while I was like, what's my thing going to be? Maybe I'll write a sitcom. Maybe I'll be a sketch comic. Maybe I'll do stand-up. There's so many avenues with which you can create content nowadays, as an artist. And so this was one of those things when we did our first one on policing. Which was kind of the origin of it. Ty Rivera was on that. We also had Greg Edwards, who was the host of Thug Notes, a YouTube series. We had an LAPD police officer and a historian, Thaddeus Russell. And that was kind of it was a time of a lot of tension around Ferguson and stuff like that. And it was such a great experience, just like to have a conversation where I was like, I never thought I'd be able to have a conversation like that. And, if I hadn't created the show, it's very possible no one else in the room would have had a conversation like that. And that was like an experience in my life that I'm glad I had. And I think this is what I'm going to focus on, because creating those experiences.
No question. Did your mind change at all, hearing either side of things, or hearing a more complete picture?
A little bit. I mean, because the thing is, you replay your conversations in your head so much, and you think you know everything, and then sometimes the conversation takes a turn where you're like, whoa, I thought everyone was going to be on the same page here because it's so common sense to me. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes I disagreed with people because they just had a different point of view. But I was also like, especially like talking to a cop, because I have my idea of what policing's like. Mm-hmm. And the cop was maybe it was unusual for cops, but he was so chill and like really progressive and interesting. And I was like, oh, wow. So like, in some cases it's been my instinct to, defend police. And it was like, 5% of cops are just too stupid to do this job. you gotta know that. Like most cops are pretty good, but there's a percentage that just suck, and I can't get fired. He told me that. He's like, yeah, it's pretty sweet. I mean, I cannot get fired unless I really fuck up. And just so stuff like that from the horse's mouth was like, oh, well, why am I attributing things to your profession that you aren't even? But it was also that's only one side of it. It was a very nuanced debate, but
okay. And 5% of everybody is terrible at their jobs. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do have that added advantage. I actually know a cop because the first episode I didn't publicize it, but it was I interviewed a black police officer. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about policing. Mm-hmm. We talked about black issues.
Interesting.
But he is a black officer that's also a member of the Nation of Islam, so that's really confusing. Huh. Yeah, he would be great.
But I'd love to have him.
He has his own ideas as well, mm-hmm. and his perspective is just a little different, and it kind of turned me around to policing as well, because they're doing a job that is really tough. Like a lot of us judge it, but we have no idea what that's like and the stress that they're under every single day. And yes, in hindsight, things look worse than they are a lot of times. So it's such a toss up. Between how to judge this, and we do. I think what more people need to do, especially with the police shootings, is let's hold off judgment, not jump to conclusions on either side of these, on both sides of this issue. Yeah, we need to come together and actually have real discussions like what you do and what other people should be doing, because then I think the problem is that the community doesn't trust the cops, and the cops don't trust the community. That's bad for both.
Totally.
And somehow, if we could bring those people together, that would be the best. And I hope, voices like ours will help do that. Yeah. Let's actually have real conversations. Let's stop yelling at each other for a minute.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and so much of the yelling at each other happens, in these echo chambers, right? So it's like you just go with your friends and you get mad, and then someone else goes with their friends and they get mad, and you're just getting madder and madder. But then when you're in the same room, sometimes people yell at each other, but most often they're like, oh, you're just a person. Yeah. Like I built you up so much in my mind to be diabolical or something, or this image of everything I despise. But it's like, no, you just see the world differently. Yeah. You're a good person, Yeah, you want the best for everyone.
You wake up every day, you eat.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I eat.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's start where we have something in common first, and then we'll figure out the harder stuff later, And another really good episode was we talked about it a little bit with the free speech episode, where you had the again. I do remember to go back to that. I do remember that this girl was really mad at the I forget his name. I can't remember right now.
Rob Montz, the director.
Yeah. A very smart individual, has his own perspective, of course, but I think he tackled it with tact and grace, knowing he was in basically a zone where everyone pretty much thought differently than him. It seemed like that.
A lot of people. I mean, I don't know if everyone, because there were definitely, some people who were, I think, came there because they liked the film and they wanted to see it, in person or see the discussion. So, but I mean, whenever you're in Hollywood, the background is most people are going to be quite progressive, and he's coming from a libertarian angle on free speech issues. But he handled it well, and that was also part of what we wanted, because that was the premiere event.
Okay.
And one thing that we're conscientious of here is, or try to be conscientious of here, is that, like, we talk about free speech and, breaking an echo chamber or whatever, but it's very easy for us to fall into that,
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we wanted to premiere it at an event where there would be people who disagreed with us and, were willing to challenge things and show that, A, that it's possible, B, that we'll put our money where our mouth is, and C, to be sure that, we have the ability to back it up, and I think Rob did a really good job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I liked about that episode is, because I watch a lot of videos on YouTube on both sides of every issue. I try to stay up to date.
That's great.
And both sides have this common problem where they say the other side doesn't listen. Both sides.
Yeah.
They go, they're just idiots, they don't listen. And the other side does the same thing. And I'm
Absolutely.
like, no, there's a lot of people that are in the middle area that want to actually debate things.
Yeah.
And want to hear ideas that they don't exactly agree with. It's that old adage of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you're paying attention to the loudest, most obnoxious versions of each side, but everybody else is pretty reasonable, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And the volume and obnoxiousness also, I think, makes people afraid in the middle to speak up because, they're afraid of being demonized or yelled at, or just that they feel like they doubt themselves or their own opinions sometimes because, everyone's making everything so black and white.
Yeah. Especially black and white people. No, I'm kidding.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Sometimes one thing I remember as a psychology student when I was in school was there's the ash line experiment. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
It's basically an experiment where they have this, they bring in like a test subject and they say, we're going to ask you some very basic questions, and they're in a group setting.
Okay.
And they don't realize that everyone else in this group is a Confederate, not like politically, but like,
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
They're just actors.
Yeah.
Pretending to be in it. And so what they do is they say, like, just tell us which of these lines are the shortest. And they have 3 lines that are clearly different lengths. And I think they go through 1 or 2 rounds where everyone just gives the correct answer. And then on one of them, everyone just gives the wrong answer. So it's like for 15 people in a row say, oh, clearly line B is the shortest line. And you see, like, they have hidden cameras and you see their faces like, what's going on? But most of them say B, they give the wrong answer because they either doubt themselves or they're afraid to challenge the consensus and get judged by their peers, even though they don't know them.
Yeah, no, I actually have seen that, and they did that on Brain Games. That's why I didn't recognize the original study.
Yeah.
But they redid it on Brain, which is a great show. If you ever want to see some fun experiments, but they took some of they made the science fun.
That's cool.
So they did that very same experiment and exactly what you talked about.
Yeah.
They had Confederates, and then everyone said B, and most people were like, I guess it's B, because we don't want to go against the grain. That's, that's just nature. That's human nature because
we're social animals.
We are very social animals. So if we went against the grain, we would probably die.
Yeah.
So of course we're not going to go against the grain. But at the same time, that's why people that do go against the grain, I think we also, in a weird way, we prop them up too. Like music a lot of times. People that are like the rebels, that we go, yeah, those people are awesome. I do that with comedy. I'm sure everyone has their version of artists that they do it with, where they go, yeah, that's the guy that he doesn't care. He's going to fight the system. Yeah. And that was ingrained in me when I was in high school. I would do that. I would be the one. I remember my sociology teacher did this one experiment where he told us all that none of us are going to prom. And And the only way you could get to prom is we'd have to petition the principal, but none of us were going to go, and most people just took it. And I stood up, and I was about to walk out and go march into the principal's office, and I wasn't even going to prom. Like I didn't even care. I wasn't going to spend the money. I didn't want to go, but I was like, this is injustice. I'm going to stand up for this, and I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to protest.
Yeah.
And that, that's, and he ended up going, Chris, no. This isn't real. This is an experiment to see if you guys would do anything.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And good for you.
Yeah.
You won the experiment.
I think I did. I actually got him to break before he wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the type of person I've always been. I've always wanted to like fight for what's right, even if other people won't.
Yeah.
And I get that sense from you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I could tell. You could tell the fellow people in this business that are trying to do the right thing. It's very hard. It's a very lonely path at times.
It can be, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've always sort of tried to stick up for what's right, and it's interesting, like when I've been thinking recently now about what occupied my interest. You know what I mean? Because now I feel like more consumed by this or that issue, but I think when I started, I had this really deep desire to tackle like violence, I kept trying to do material on, how we sort of know that there's tons of violence going on and we don't address it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, like people are like, oh, if it was World War II, I would have done something. But there's concentration camps in North Korea, there's genocides happening in, Sudan or whatever. And at a deep level, we love violence. Like we claim to be against it, but then all of the most popular like movies and video games, they're all violent. Like we have this. So that always fascinated me. And I tried to like talk about that a lot. And then, I feel like when I feel like also when I first started doing comedy and for a number of years, maybe until like almost like 2013, political comedy was not really in fashion. Like there weren't really many people doing it. And it swung up a bit recently, but
I don't know why.
Yeah. But it's just like it's interesting to think because like you get like subsumed in the debate of the moment or the month or the year, and it's interesting to think like what quote unquote standing up for what was right was before then.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking aloud a little bit, but
no, absolutely. And to that point about the debate of the year or the debate of the moment, that is another thing that because of social media, there's outrage every 5 seconds about something in the news cycle, and it's so much faster than it used to be. I don't know if you've seen that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's almost sometimes you almost make an investment call. You're like, am I going to write a blog post about this issue? Or when I finish it in 2 days, it's going to be totally irrelevant. Yeah. And it's also frustrating when you see like stuff blow up in the news and you're like, why are people paying attention to that? But then if you talk about that, then you're fueling the cycle,
Well, the latest, as of this recording, the latest thing I can think of is the Kendall Jenner Pepsi thing. Oh, and the United thing. Yeah. And both of those are very different. But the Kendall Jenner thing, I was just like, it's a commercial. Why don't you just ignore it like every other commercial? Yeah. The United thing, I mean, with the guy with the bloody nose, it looked pretty bad. And then United didn't help their cause by bringing up his past. They're trying to smear him. And who knows, in that situation, I wasn't there. The video looked really bad for them, and it's going to be a PR disaster for them. So I think, in a way, justice will be done through the market, if you will.
It'll be interesting to see. It's interesting to think about like what the market, because it's usually people who are quite libertarian or whatever, who are talk about the market as dispensing justice. But what if they lose $1 billion in market cap? Is that justice? A $2 billion? It's like, I guess who decides? What if it ends up not affecting them?
The people, I think. The people will decide.
Yeah. I guess they implicitly do.
Implicitly with their dollar, like the most powerful vote is your dollar.
Yeah. So absolutely.
you can say I'm not gonna fly them, and then they will do everything they can to get. It's gonna be like a cycle for them where they go, oh, we messed up.
Yeah.
We need to make some changes because the dollar speaks more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's why when companies
that's who they're accountable for in the end is their shareholders. So you know,
absolutely, and that's why when companies do these, to me, all this social justice in commercials is kind of fake.
Yeah,
because they don't care about that. They just care about the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care one way or the other.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the people who are producing this stuff have opinions, but I mean, I'm sure, you know, if it was going to sell more Pepsi, if they thought it was going to sell more Pepsi to just like have an MMA commercial, you know what I mean? Like they would have just done that probably.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, okay, I'll give you that. And, but I was trying to relate it to the Jenner thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they had this, it looked like a protest. People said it looked like Black Lives Matter. To me, it just looked like a protest.
Yeah. That was like an annoying thing where it was like, people were like, it's a Black Lives Matter protest that they're making. I'm like, nothing. There's no Black Lives Matter signs.
No.
You're just putting that on it. But now like, if I contest it, I feel like am I breaking some taboo or something, you know?
Well,
it's not. Yeah. It's just like, why did you just invent that? I mean, I guess there are police officers, but the police officers don't ever protest.
Exactly. And that's, when I saw it, I was just like, this is just a protest for peace. All the signs just said peace.
Uh-huh.
It didn't say like Black Lives. If it had said any lives matter on it, even if it didn't say Black Lives, I would have been like, okay, I can see the correlation. Yeah. But when I watched the commercial, I'm just like, I just don't understand what people are freaked out about. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like a non-story, but I think it was a trick by Pepsi.
You think they're, yeah.
I think they did it to get outrage, because outrage also sells.
I don't know. I sort of think,
or at least get
the take that I heard was they thought 75% of, you know, like they had some demographic research say most millennials consider themselves activists or whatever. So we're going to try to brand ourselves the activist soda, which is ridiculous. And I did think it was a little tasteless at the end where it's like, okay, come on, this is a stupid commercial. But would I be like, I would never be angry about it if I just saw it, you know?
Yeah, your activism brought to you by Pepsi.
Yeah.
You know? Here, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. It was just a dumb commercial, and if they just, but here's the thing: to people that get outraged all the time, if you just ignore something stupid, it goes away really fast. Yeah, it just goes away, and nobody cares. Uh-huh. That's more powerful. Silence, it's pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. I don't think people understand that, because like when you try to. That's kind of onto the free speech thing. When you try to ban something, I feel like it gives more power to the thing you banned than the actual cause sometimes.
It's odd how it works. I feel like there's some, you know, I wish if there were some deity showing how the world worked. I feel like there'd be a curve, you know, where there's a certain point at which you can snuff something out. Yeah. And there's a certain point at which you cannot, or you'll make it worse, or maybe a percentage of the time that you try to, that you will. With like the Pepsi ad, I mean, I feel like if there hadn't been an outrage, they probably would have kept airing it. Yeah. I mean, it would have been playing, you know, just like every commercial for a few months. But, so I mean, I guess they got it pulled or something.
Kind of, but it's on YouTube like crazy.
Yeah. So I guess there are more people, but they're seeing it in a different context now, right? Yeah. They're not seeing it like it's just.
It didn't end up. Yeah, it didn't end up going the way they wanted it. Mm-hmm. But I almost feel like even more people saw it because of the outrage. Yeah. So
is that going to be an effective? Are most people who see that going to be less likely to drink Pepsi though?
If you're addicted to Pepsi, you're addicted to Pepsi. you're like, oh, damn Pepsi. Oh, that's good.
I feel like if you were, that's something that could get people to switch brands. Not easy to switch brands.
Have you tried Coke? It's terrible.
Do people not like Coke?
Well, if you like Pepsi, you like Pepsi. Really? And you hate Coke. If you like Coke, you hate Pepsi.
To me, these are like tomato. Like there's no difference or such a slight difference that.
I'm a rum drinker, so I prefer Coke. Uh-huh. So I didn't even care about this whole Pepsi thing. It wouldn't have affected me in any way, shape, or form. I like my rum and Cokes.
I like a rum and Coke. Yeah. But it's cola. It's the same, you know, like.
But there is a difference.
Okay. I would guess I mean, I would guess like most people would not be able to taste the difference. I'm sure like 50% of people can, or people who drink it like regularly. But even a lot of things that people drink a lot. Like I remember I had a blind, I'm a nerd, but at one point I had like a blind tasting party where we had like 6 different kinds of whiskey and 6 different kinds of vodka, like top shelf to bottom.
Nice.
And a blind setup. And I had people rate them. And like even my friend who was like literally drank Jack Daniels every day, like it was favorite drink, Jack, always Jack. He'd drink it and be like, it tastes familiar. And I'm like, really?
And he couldn't.
He eventually got it. He's like, is it Jack? And I was like, yeah, it is. But like, even him, who was like, this is a regular taste that he's experienced, but they're not that dissimilar.
Okay, I took the Pepsi challenge and I picked Coke every time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I did it more than once. Remember when they were doing that a long time ago?
Yeah.
Feels like forever now. Feels like it was before the internet. It wasn't, but it feels like it was.
It was 90s. I feel like it was like a grown up thing for me.
Yeah, I remember taking it, going, "Oh, I love this," and they go, and it was the Pepsi people doing it, and they're like, "Oh, that's Coke." I'm like,
probably not use you in the commercial.
Yeah, they didn't, not whatsoever. But yeah, so but I do agree with you that a lot of things that we taste, it's psychological more than it's the actual flavor.
Yeah.
And they've proven that in many studies where if you're told something is good enough, you will just believe it's good, whether or not it's good. You can trick your mind into just, because a lot of your flavor isn't just your tongue, but it's also how you perceive it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and you can like play this game with yourself. Like right now it's Passover, so I'm like not eating wheat basically. And
unleavened bread.
Delicious. Unleavened bread.
Yeah.
Or leavened bread I can't eat.
Oh.
I can eat unleavened bread. Unleavened bread is matzah.
Yes. Oh, I meant you're eating unleavened bread.
Yeah, I'm eating unleavened bread, yes.
I know a little bit about the Jewish community.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Or like, if you cut out sugar, like fruit starts to taste super sweet.
Yes.
Stuff like that. So we judge things relatively.
Yeah, everything's relative. And that's my whole perspective on life, is everything is relative.
Yeah.
Like good and bad, it's really just your experiences, and your experiences taint what you think is good and bad. So, like, I'll give you an example. I always, before I get my phones, like my iPhones, I'd always like, oh, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And then you get it, and you're like, after about a month, you're like, So you get, no matter how good something is, you just get used to it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you might as well just enjoy what you have.
Yeah. It's like, once you break out to the next level. I mean, our standard of living is higher. I talk about this a lot in my act, but there's standard of living higher than any point in history. Like, if you could have taken someone, even like 20 years ago to be in this room with the capability of everything that we have on the internet and, the access to the restaurants that we have outside has improved dramatically. I think the quality of them has. I know the food I eat as a vegetarian is massively better than what it was when I was growing up. Just like, I mean, you'd be elated, but then you just get used to it. Even like, what? One thing that I was reading was, because I was like, man, people like who grew up in the 19th century, they must have just smelled awful.
Probably, yeah.
They weren't like, especially before that, they're not showering regularly. They don't have access to the soaps.
Yeah.
Shampoos. None of this just wasn't there. So like, they must have just smelled awful. And I remember like Googling it and reading, and historians were like, yeah, but everything just smelled more, so people got used to it.
Yeah, I mean that's I've gotten used to my own smell because I live in a very small place.
Yeah.
So this is a little embarrassing, but yeah, my apartment is tiny. It's like about the size. It's slightly bigger than this
office.
Yeah. If you can't see it, but it's a good size office, but it would be small to live in.
Yeah, I would say it's about like 10 feet by 20 feet, 15 feet or something. Yeah, 10 feet by 15 feet, we'll say.
It's a little bit bigger than this, but not much. And so it feels cramped, and you just get used to your own scent. Yeah. And after a while, it doesn't bother you. Yeah. It just doesn't. It's like I'm fine with it.
Yeah, because your brain knows you can't be worrying about a background scent all the time.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I don't even, and so I'm sure things smell terrible then, but like you said, I bet people were just like, oh, that's just Charlie. he smells like that, what are you going to do?
Mm.
People were more understanding in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what, you're going to be mad at everyone you walk into or come across? No, you can't be.
Well, that's why the French developed perfume.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the best at smelling okay.
It's interesting because now they have the reputation for not showering.
Well, again, they never did. So
yeah,
they're just holding tradition up. That's all.
Fair enough. They were ahead of the curve. Now they're behind it.
Yeah, happens to all of us.
Yeah.
But I was gonna. Back to something a little bit more serious, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I was trying to get to that point. I was listening to that free speech podcast, and I remember that girl at the end. I don't know if you remember that moment.
I'm trying to remember. I remember at the end there were a few people who are more, I think, I would say, very progressive, sort of. I want to say SJW. I'm not like, maybe that's too much. No, but they're very progressive, right?
You can say it here. This is a safe space.
Thank you. But from that end of the spectrum, although I thought they were, but I have a thought, but I'll let you go.
Oh no, I was just trying to understand her outrage. I didn't quite understand what she was mad at exactly because I listened to it a few times, and I don't know. She was mad at the director, but I don't know why.
I'm not sure if 100% sure that we were thinking about the same person, but I'm fairly sure. But there was one person who seemed, and this was partially, I think, an artifact of we advertise on the internet, so we get people from the internet, and so people are coming from sort of, we talk about there being two great bubbles, but there's also lots of little bubbles.
Yeah, and
I feel like sometimes people come to the show with this whole narrative and worldview, and it's something that they're almost speaking a different language because everyone else doesn't have the background that they do, and their idea of relative importance of things, not that it's wrong necessarily, but it's just different. Like people like, I think I remember she said something, or someone said something on that podcast where they were like, how can I relate to someone who is a Zionist about like this or that? And I'm like, whoa, I didn't see Zionism coming into this discussion. This is just about free speech on campus.
Yeah.
No one had mentioned Israel, Palestine, but it was like, this was like a major part of, the story of the world to her. Mm-hmm. And so it was just like, I'm not sure what point you're making, because I think it's probably makes a lot of sense if you have a background in this war of Zionism and Palestinian liberation, but no one else is coming into this room with this,
That is
background.
who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Where I just didn't, like, she went on and I was just trying to, I'm like, I heard it a few times and I'm like, I don't understand what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And she was mad at the director for some reason, and he tried to handle it, but he was like, also seemed confused.
Was she the one who liked the movie but had some qualms?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting because she said she liked the movie, and I think she had she had some, I think, one point which was interesting, and I thought it was the sum of it, and then she went on herself on this other tangent where I was like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm on the same page. Okay. But it was basically, I think she was making the argument that she said, like the director was saying, basically, I think that when people are talking this language of racial identity politics, they're ignoring class, which is the overriding factor, Like you're talking about sorry.
No, I was going to say, I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
People do ignore class for racial identity politics.
Yeah. And it's a silly thing to ignore, especially in the context of a debate about we can't ignore the stuff that we've been ignoring for too long. Yeah. But then you're ignoring class, which is the elephant in the room, I think, of in a lot of these debates. And it's clearly prescient when you're dealing with a reaction to these incidents where people are saying like, oh, look at these Yale students talking about how they're oppressed when they're in the privileged 1% who have the ability to go study econ, go get a job on Wall Street making $180,000 a year. You know what I mean? And you're acting like you're, under a jackboot.
Yeah, although their school did cost probably $180,000.
That's true, but it's 2 years. Paid it off.
No, I'm not saying, but if they don't get that job, it's pretty tough going.
Yeah. So she was saying, like, I understand that, that class is a big factor, but it's not the only factor. Like, I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. Other people were wealthy, but there was a lot of times when, because I was the only, I think she was Persian.
Yeah.
Because I was the only person of my ethnicity, I felt isolated and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And now when I hear that, I think there's probably some truth to it. There might also just be, maybe you're just socially awkward and you're putting it on your ethnicity instead of you being a socially awkward person.
I feel that a lot with some people because I'm like, you are a different race, but if you're just cool, like people don't care most of the time.
Yeah.
I've worked at a lot of places. I've worked at casinos. Mm-hmm. I've worked at mostly low wage jobs. So I've worked around a lot of different types of ethnicities. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, as long as you're cool, no one cares what you are.
Yeah. It's a very small minority that's like, that person's great, but they're a different race, so fuck them. That's like a very small percentage of overt racists. I mean, I do believe that racial bias is a real thing and does influence. You can find this in experiments when people are rating resumes and stuff like that.
And no one's saying racism or that doesn't exist, but I feel like it's such a smaller factor than actually personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I can give you an example. When I worked at the casino, I remember we'd have a lot of there was an African American boss and African American employees, Chinese, every race, mm-hmm. and this one black guy would show up late all the time, mm-hmm. and then he'd just be like, "Oh man, they're just firing me because I'm black," and I'm like, "Well, no, because the rest of the black people are here on time, and they have jobs." Mm-hmm. It's like, so it's not because you're black, it's really because you need to show up on time.
Yeah,
I mean, all of us are on time. Yeah, like I don't mean just but like everyone else is on time, so you should be too. Yeah. So it's not but there is examples both ways. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist because it absolutely does. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think people also need to take stock in how are they acting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky because I mean honestly I've seen both things. I've seen people, in a minority of people who like clearly have an axe to grind against an ethnicity or gender or whatever, and then there's people who just have some sort of bias where they're they seem to not take people as seriously because they're black or a woman or something like that. But then you also do see people who are like just not good at their jobs and they're like, I can't get ahead because I'm a woman or whatever, and it's like, you can't use PowerPoint or something like that. And it's just like, it drives you crazy. And so like, I don't know. I just wish people would not deny that those things exist on other ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, both things can be true at once.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish there was more of an effort to be like, let's just acknowledge that and like try to create a picture of what the advantages are, what the disadvantages are, what the unique experiences are, and not be like, my group is at the bottom and we're suffering, and how the truth is not overwhelming in one direction or the other. And so like just do a complete picture without having an intense skew of my team right, your team bad,
Yeah. As I like to say, the truth is in the middle.
Yeah.
Name of the show. Plug.
And I agree with that because like, and I'll talk about that generally. And, I used to consider myself more of a centrist. Now I sort of go towards moderate because Trump is elected. So I feel like, and I really don't like Trump. So, I mean, although, I'm willing to acknowledge if he's done something right or something I agree with.
That's fair enough.
It's important.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to I think now I'm just getting in a tangent. I think if Trump does something good, that should be encouraged to show him that, hey, you can be more popular if you do normal things and don't act erratically. And,
Yeah.
I think that will influence things. And I don't think it's good to just oppose people at every turn. Anyway, back to what I was saying. But that said, I dislike a lot of the things that he represents. And so now I can't say I'm like halfway between Republicans and Democrats or whatever, but I feel like I'm a moderate, because I do feel like even if I do feel like generally the truth is in the middle, and people will say, well, that's a bias of its own. Maybe it's one side is right and one side is wrong, like say global warming or something like that, or anti-vaccination stuff where it's, or the moon landing being faked, where it's like the truth isn't in the middle. It happened or it didn't. Yeah. Right. And probably did happen. Yeah. I think it happens. I think it's ridiculous to think that there was a conspiracy there, but I do think that in most political issues, especially in this age, even if the truth is more on one side, the advocates for it will go that much farther out.
Yes, they go so far to where it's like it almost muddies the point.
Yeah, so the truth ends up being somewhere between the two goalposts.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more on one side, maybe it's more on the other. But there's always going to be people who are farther out than where it lies.
You did a global warming, I believe, didn't you, podcast?
We did an environmentalism one. It wasn't specifically on global warming.
Okay. Now, those environmentalists can get a little crazy at times for their point of view. And I think that most everybody on both sides agree that we need to protect the planet in some way, shape, or form. I do understand more now, more of the nuance of that. Things I didn't understand before, especially the 98% scientists agree thing. I didn't realize how people can skew the numbers for that. Like how, yes, they agree, but how much do they agree to the degree that we're affecting it? Yeah. It's like, wow, once you just, that little nugget is like, oh, whoa, I didn't ever think of that. I thought they just agreed. Because that's what people would say, on one side or the other. And it's like, oh, okay. So there's a little more nuance to that. Everyone agrees that something is happening, but we don't, how much is man-made and how much is natural, or what is the extent of the damage really going to be? Yeah, exactly. Because I remember I watched the Al Gore documentary, like a lot of people, I'm sure, and it sounded like things were going to be terrible already by now. We should have been flooded, and we should have been, but things aren't as bad. So how bad is it really? I'm not saying it isn't happening, but how fast is it happening? Do we really know? Because I think as humans, we're not very good at predicting the future in any either way. Yeah, we're just bad at that. Yeah, because it's really unpredictable. I think just life in general. We like to have control over every little thing, but you can't. You just can't. We can't know a lot of things, and only thing we can change is like what we can do now. And I think we should try to cut emissions. Obviously, I think personally, this is my view. I think we should try to do what we can to get off fossil fuels. But until we can't, we're just gonna have to accept some, like places like China and third world countries are gonna need them. And we can't control them. We just can't. We can only control us. Well, maybe we do have international trade agreements, which we have some degree of capability of enforcing, but I mean, it's tricky to get people to agree, and it is tricky to get people not to cheat to some extent. I mean, I do think the thing that's really going to solve global warming is technology. Yeah, or a giant ice cube. Or a giant ice cube. From Futurama. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that the technology comes, it's like with coal, we can legalize coal, or not legalize, but we can, deregulate, and take some things off, restrictions off of coal. But if it's more expensive than solar, people are just going to do solar. Yeah. Like, it's surprising how much actually some of the leading areas of renewable energy now are like Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah. Because they make money off of it. And
But that being said, I do think a lot of the push for green technology is rooted in the acknowledgement of or the at least perception of global warming as a huge problem. So that's created an incentive for people to focus on that. It's caused more research dollars to be poured into that. And I mean, I think that it's a little dangerous, I think, just to figure out like, and this is something like I am worried about global warming, and I cringe a little bit when I hear statistics like, oh, all these 98% of scientists agree, because you're absolutely right. That's kind of a misleading statistic. It doesn't provide a lot of nuance. You don't know what did they agree on. All these questions that you've raised, these are perfectly legitimate questions. And I think it invites a tribal factor when you're using an argument to consensus, especially based on an unclear statistic. What worries me is seeing the chart of temperatures, like if you look at the temperature, XKCD actually, a comic strip, did a great one where he literally charted the mean temperature as shown through ice cores and ice core studies, and I think also trees and stuff like that, but for like thousands of years. And he shows it like varying, slightly and slightly as dinosaurs go and rise and fall. And then, humans, cross the Bering Strait and all these things. And then, it's varying 2-3 degrees gradually over these centuries. And then you just see it go shoop at the end, and that's what worries me. And, I mean, there has been, perhaps some of the predictions about imminent ice shelf, Antarctica just melting like that were wrong. But, it's a very complex system with many, many factors, and it's hard to anticipate. But I do think that, in geological time, we're still talking nanoseconds, and
absolutely.
So I do, and, I mean, it's hard to predict things like where will the arable land be? Will people just shift and build new cities and whatnot? Or maybe they need to, but maybe they won't need to. But I think it just, to my eyes, it looks like scary. And it looks like something that we should act on. And, I've looked in, my dad is a global warming skeptic. And I heard out his arguments, and I researched them, and a lot of them just don't hold up. Like, that's the other thing, is it's like, I'll do my due diligence, I'll read the other side, and why not? What am I afraid of?
No, absolutely. The discussion should at least be had.
And, devote an hour to that, 2 hours, whatever. Like, just know, is this an issue that I should be really concerned about and I should be posting about and raising awareness of? Or is it not a big deal and it's all bullshit? Or, because sometimes, if you're just like, well, I'm not sure, then you might not take the right action, right? So I think it's worth informing yourself. But I did research into the impacts of like these solar cycles and things like that, and it just doesn't add up to the impacts. NASA has some great infographics on their website. You can see like, the influence of natural and human and things like that, and I think it's convincing in a way that the more rhetorical arguments weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would encourage people to look into it themselves and not just believe one side or the other, but really try and investigate and figure it out. Because I don't know where I stand on it yet, because I haven't researched it enough. I just know that there are some questions on one side or the other, but I do think we need to do something. I just don't know what that something is. You know? But I'm not a politician, and I have no power.
Yeah.
So,
but you do have power. You have the power of the dollar.
Yeah, that's
true. You have the power of social media. You have a podcast. We don't. A lot of people have power, so I don't have a big share of the power.
True.
But it can sometimes be surprising how asymmetrical power can be. It's funny how even just within my own life, some things I work on for years might have less influence than something I produce in an hour that goes viral. Or I produce for We the Internet and we put some ad dollars behind it, and all of a sudden it's been seen by a couple 100,000 people.
Wow.
And you're like, maybe that's if I'm looking at the impact I have on the world, my friends tweeted we should have our next protest on tax day.
Yeah,
which is for Donald Trump, which is happening right now.
Right now, yeah.
It's just because he tweeted it on a whim.
Oh, okay.
And that's so you can be surprised the influence you can have. It's hard to predict, and it's not consistent.
I want to protest H&R Block for tax day, but that's just I have my own personal reasons. But I just want to say thank you, Toby, for doing this. I think we had a great conversation.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
And where can people find you? All your social media information.
The first thing, the live show, Monday, April 17th, 8 p.m., Hollywood Improv Lab. We got Kira Sultanovich, Sophia Alexandra, and two experts on one on international relations, a professor from USC, and a journalist, the founder of Stateless Media, Peter Savadnik, who's also been a Moscow-based correspondent and stuff like that.
Wow.
So that'll be a lot of fun. You can listen to our podcast. It's Unsafespace. Just Google, or not Google, but search in iTunes podcasts or your Android app or whatever. It's in all of those. And at Unsafe Space Show, at We the Internet TV, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. And I'm Toby Muresianu, TobyTheComic.com as my personal social media.
Oh, cool. Perfect. So they can find you and everything on there.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I just want to thank you again for devoting this time to do this interview. I had a great time, and I hope you did.
Yeah.
And for all of you out there, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe. Please comment if you like it. Please spread it around. You guys have been wonderful. Toby, you were great.
Thank you very much.
Have a good good night. I was going to say have a good night. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you for listening to The Middle with Chris Adams. Please subscribe, please comment, please let me know what you thought. You can follow me on Twitter at Comic Chris Adams, Comedian Chris Adams on Facebook, and Comic Chris Adams on Instagram. My website is chrisadamscomedy.net. Please let me know what you think. I thank you so much again for listening. Have a wonderful day.